Zeno Staub, welcome to the Executive Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get something out of the way immediately.
Yeah.
In every interview I read about you, you're always being asked, oh, it's been 8 years since you're CEO of Vontobel. How long are you staying? Do you want to change? It's such a long time. Does that bother you sometimes, that people kind of talk you off or want you to leave all the time?
It's a standard question apparently from everybody. I got used to it. I still have the same answer. I'm very committed to Vontobel. I'm happy in my function, and as long as I can bring change and development to the company, and as long as clients, shareholders, the board are happy with how we develop together the company, I'm happy to move forward.
Why do you think that is, that question? Because 8 years, yes, you might say it's a long time. Yeah. It's a long time at the head of a bank, obviously, also in Europe, for example. Is being a CEO of a finance institute such a short-term thing?
I think, unfortunately, it became like that. I mean, when you look at the average tenure of people in listed companies, it has come down over the last years. Second reason, I think, you know, no offense, but journalists sell news.
Mm-hmm. And they're looking for that news.
And but I think actually tenure is in principle a positive thing. And you know, we as an asset management company, as an asset manager, we understand that tenure, stability, robustness of processes actually can translate in added value for investors, for shareholders, for clients. And it always has to, obviously, to make sense in the composition of the team, of the company, and it has to fit with the personal needs of every individual. But we do not see tenure in principle as a negative thing, the contrary of it. We also believe that experience helps, as long as one does not take experience as an excuse to say we have always done it like this, I'm not going to change.
Yeah.
So as long as you stay self-critical, willing to learn, willing to fail, willing to change things, experience actually helps.
I guess that's exactly the point. And when we talk about people who have been working in a company for a long time. I mean, you've been at Vontobel since 2001, so yes. 10 years before you became CEO. There's always the risk of being too involved, maybe to know the place too much. There's that German word Betriebsblindheit, so that you don't see the issues anymore. Do you see that risk as well?
I think the risk is there. I think it is something that you have deliberately work against it, and obviously we are all human beings. I mean, human beings also like rituals. Human beings like things to that repeat themselves. You probably have a favorite holiday spot, or you have a favorite restaurant, or a favorite tie, or whatever. So also repetition gives comfort, creates comfort zone. So you have to deliberately fight against that. You have to challenge yourself. You have to benchmark to the outside world. You have to think across the boundaries of sectors and industry. And I think the most important thing is actually that the people and the team around you challenge you.
Mm-hmm. When we look at the bigger picture of that question, something that is quite striking is that notion of stability around Vontobel. We said it, CEO for a long time. Your predecessor is now the chairman of Vontobel, Mr. Scheidt, so he's been here for a long time. It's a family structure in the shareholders as well. So everything is a little bit less kind of short-term than in other companies. How much is that an asset for the bank? And maybe for you as well, in leading that bank, that you know that there's some kind of foundation, some stability behind it?
I think it's a very important asset, but I think it's also very, very decisive to state that you have kind of described part of the picture. You know, if stability is abused in order to explain mediocrity, in order to explain indecisiveness, in order to explain a lack of courage to move forward, then obviously stability can move into stasis, and then sooner or later you die. But as long as stability is used as an anchor that gives you the ability to develop to move things forward, I think it's a very, very good thing. And you know, I have been here since 2001. We have seen ups and downs during these times at capital markets, and it has been, we have seen very helpful situations where this anchor really has helped. But through the same time period, this company has also changed itself tremendously. You know.
Let's speak about those changes, because I mean, you alluded to it already 2 or 3 times, that you need to change, you need to move forward, otherwise you're doomed. And speaking of doom, in every interview I read from you, I always have the impression you're almost like the Cassandra of the finance industry in Switzerland. I wouldn't say it's doom and gloom, but you warn quite a lot. You say, look, if you don't move, there's not going to be as many banks as before. We have huge challenges. Are you in that role? Do you see yourself in that role as well? That you say, if I have to be the one that warns people, otherwise it's not going to go on.
To a certain degree, yes. I think you know. I think also, you know, when we have now the privilege that as an organization we have developed, I would say, pretty well over the last years. We have built together a story that has helped clients and us as a company to move forward. And it's also, again, a human thing. People like to be proud about what they've done, and that's also important. You know, you have to praise people, you can be proud, but then you have to have a certain a controlled amount of paranoia.
That's interesting. That you want to bring across also to your team, maybe?
I think it has to be part of everyone's behavior, especially if we are an active management house. The market can prove us every day wrong. So we always have to think, is my investment thesis right? Why is it right? Did I do all my homework? What could it prove wrong? So you have to be constantly
alert.
On watch, alert. And I think that's important. That should not lead to a point where you don't dare to do anything. It's not. It's obviously fatal if this would lead into a blame culture. Oh, you did something and it went wrong, you're culpable. But it's very that sound amount of paranoia, I think, protects, because you know you have to put yourself in the shoes of an active investor, and all our investment teams are active investors. What do active investors do? They disagree with the market consensus. How is the market consensus represented? With today's market prices. So they look into the price screen of Bloomberg every day and they say, I have a different opinion and my opinion is right. You have to be a pretty strong character.
You have to be a risk taker, and you have to be
and you have to be very
willing to swim against the stream, right?
Yeah, about your own foundations, about your own values, about your own homework. And then in order to avoid that this does not translate into hybris, I think a bit of paranoia helps.
Hybris is a good keyword. That's something that you were never. No one ever said, you know, he's the typical banker, or Mr. Staub is someone who's you know,
who wants to be typical.
Exactly. So you were never at risk to fall into that hybris trap, were you?
That's one of the things where perception is reality. You have to judge. I think I'm okay. Yeah.
Is that part of your growing up as well? Because you've come from a normal family. I think your father was a janitor, so nothing kind of, you know, where someone would say, okay, he's known that life for all his life already. Did that keep you grounded in that regard as well?
I think it's certainly part of that. Yes, I think it's a huge. It's actually one of the privileges of having the utter chance of having been born in Switzerland, where. The public schooling system gives everybody a fair chance, and obviously my parents did a lot in order to help me to grasp that chance and that opportunity. I found lots of opportunities in my first jobs, and then in the possibilities I had as starting my own business when I was 24. So there's also always a lot of luck involved, but obviously having witnessed in one's own life that there is opportunity, but you have to grasp it. And if strong will, hard work, and to be very fair, a fair amount of luck combines itself, you can achieve, nice things.
I mean, you have been moving a lot in your thoughts and in bringing the bank forward as well. And as I said, you were one of the early warners that said banks have to be very careful in what they do because they're at a constant risk of being disrupted, of disappearing. You famously said, I don't know, 10 years ago that there's going to be 100 banks less in 5 years' time. That didn't happen, but I mean, the trend is ongoing. Does that mean when we look another 10, 20 years ahead, do you see the Swiss banks at constant risk of disappearing?
I think everybody is at the constant risk of change, and I think what now implicitly our conversation has, like in so many cases, again turned to wealth management or cross-border private banking. And I think we have to be clear that this industry has profited for many years for very, very strong framework and conditions of simply being Swiss. And then the positioning was limited to private banking since. And we at Vontobel have never believed in that and have never done that. And
you say yourself, we're not a bank, right?
Exactly. We are an asset manager, we are a wealth manager, we are an advisor, we are a partner to our investors, to our clients. And I think it's very important to translate the positioning into an added value to the clients that is based on the true capabilities of a company, which has to be advice, investment management, discretionary management. It has to be the return, the performance of your assets that you entrust to us. And then Swissness obviously can be an added value. Swissness should continue to mean stability, reliability, rule of law, tenure of people, integrity of people, reliability of people.
But it cannot be the only USP of a bank.
No. And I mean, I've seen you wear a nice Swiss watch, but you also like it because it's reliable, it's high quality, it has a nice brand, you can service it 20 years down the road, the people will still be around. It's not cheap, but it's worth it.
Not cheap, but worth it. That could be a claim for Vontobel, of course, as well. Is that the way you want to go forward as well? That you say we are, in a way, in a niche. We are a little bit boutiquey, if I may say so. I mean, you're not the biggest player. Do you want to stay that way? Or
Absolutely. In everything we do, scale is not the domineering success factor. We're an active asset manager. We are a boutique when it comes to advice. We are a technology company when it comes to certain types of our touch points and the way we interact with clients. It's always quality. It's the quality of the people, the quality of the service, the quality of the performance, it's the speed of innovation. It's never sheer size. I think it's very challenging there are only very few parts of the financial service industry where it is about scale. And I think especially with the home market Switzerland and the headquarters in Switzerland, it's very risky to go after a scale and price strategy. We go after quality.
Doesn't that have a risk as well that you might be in the sight of big players in the industry? I mean, you're quite safe because of the share structure as well of the company. But there's always talks of what could Vontobel buy. But do you ever think that what if somebody wants to buy us?
That will never happen.
Because of the shareholder structure, because of the family structure behind it?
Because of the shareholder structure and the commitment, and because of our ability and our willingness to create a future-proof company that is valued in a way in public markets that it is attractive to investors, but not attractive for a takeover.
Okay, that's a clear answer. When we go back to the kind of system you want to create or you're about to create, there's something interesting. The idea of almost an ecosystem that you want to create around the bank in order to tackle all the challenges of the future. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, we can show, and it's a very complex topic and sometimes also overhyped.
Let's try and make it simple.
Yeah, and so perhaps one or two thoughts around it. I think one of the drivers is that the way people select services and products is changing. So we all come from a time where kind of it was a given that sooner or later, once in your life, you would wake up one morning and say, oh, I need a wealth management bank as my partner. And now people have completely different journeys when they think about these kind of services. So people who come from the product, like almost every company in this world, be it car or services or banks, they have to think at which point in the life of a client is his mind actually on the search for my added value, for my value proposition. Exactly. And then you have to think, and many of these journeys have become at least hybrid. So people use digital tools, digital networks to underpin their search, their decision process. Before, we had to learn that at the moment when people enter our door, they already have had some exposure through digital channels. So you have to think through how that journey of the clients across different medias works. I think that's one driver for ecosystem, and the other is also people today have much more choice than 20 years ago. People have now an endless selection of providers they can select from, and that creates decision costs. So what is the reaction of people? They tend to like, to a certain degree, bundled solutions.
Okay.
So they're not willing to combine 7 services from 13 players. They want places of experience where they can see how things fit together.
So one-stop shop in a way.
To a certain degree. So we also have to think which problem of clients do we solve by interacting with partners in networks. And I think these two developments, the fact that people have different selection and buying decision processes, and that people are more looking for solutions and bundled offers, create the need that we increasingly think, how can we interact in networks? How can we open up our own platforms? How can we become part of broader platforms? And obviously that's ever more important in client segments where a significant part of the servicing will go digital.
That would have been my next question. How much of that new thought, that new thinking, is a reaction to the new players in that field, which are mainly digital, which are functioning completely differently than the banks we used to know? Is this the only way to move forward if you want to compete in the future with even maybe the big tech giants of the future?
Yeah, a number of thoughts to that. First, I think we still are convinced that even in 10 years down the road, the significant part of our client experiences and the significant part of our deliveries will be coming from hybrid efforts, meaning the combination of humans.
So you're not completely digital in
and
that
machines. Yeah. Machines will also serve very importantly to make humans, when they interact with clients, more relevant, better prepared, bringing the relevant information at the very moment to the disposition of the client and the people who serve them. But despite that, obviously we see a number of important developments. First of all, yes, many clients, and this moves across generations. We obviously have to forget that digital is something for millennials. We are living and acting now in a world where we have 3, 4 different generational types that are very open and have fully embraced digital. And therefore you have to accept and to support that the client wants to interact with you across across all these channels. And the second very important point, what our marketing guy always tells us, your last best experience is your benchmark for the next experience. So why do you like, for example, when you use one of these mobility services? You like it because the mobility service is proactive, it learns, it's context sensitive, it understands what you like, and then you have 15 clicks before you can buy or sell a share on my e-banking system. That's probably not the same level of experience. So we have to accept that people translate client experience across industries. And we have to live up to that challenge. Yeah?
But would you agree that the banking sector and the finance industry hasn't really lived up to that level right now? Whoever you speak to, they say they are a bit slow in that regard. And there are other industries that have moved a bit quicker.
Yes, I think on average we have to admit to that, yes.
Change of subject. We hear not that many people from the banking industry when it comes to political decisions, when it comes to the big kind of political problems at the moment. One of those is, of course, our relationship with the EU. Are you openly talking about that? Are you telling people what you think about it, or do you have to be a bit careful there?
You know, we are an active supporter of the Banking Association. Obviously, our chairman serves also as the chairman of the Banking Association. We have many people working in all these working groups, and we try to contribute. We understand that we are a corporate citizen. We understand that the whole fabric of Switzerland is based on contribution by people, by citizens, by companies. So we try to do our part in that.
So you are in favor of a framework agreement?
We clearly understand and see, and we had the Banking Association has also voiced that very clearly, that this is the only way towards a more open, more liberal market access.
When we're looking into the future, where do you see the bank? Where do you see yourself in the bank in 10 years? I'm not going to ask you whether you're still here, that we already covered with the first question. But with all these changes that you talked about before, when we met in 10 years' time, will Vontobel look like a completely different company?
I would say yes and no. I think
it's a very Swiss answer.
Yeah, no. I'm going to be a little bit less cryptic than that. I think it will have clearly morphed or developed into a company that combines investing skills and technology to the best of our needs of our client. And in order to go there, we will probably have to become a further step more international, more investors and people on the ground also in the emerging markets in Asia, as there will also be a relevant source of alpha.
That's where you're trying a lot at the moment.
A relevant source of alpha going forward. But on the other hand, we will also stay the same. We will still be independent. We will still run this business in a long-term and very client-centric way. And we will still be
around.
No. How shall I say? Very conscious about our Swiss roots.
Last question about you. When I talk about the future, you're still a very young man, and I say that because we have always almost the same age. So
yeah. I have
but
not the feeling when I get off my bicycle on the weekend. Yeah.
So maybe still a young man, but who's growing older all the same. When you look at that future, does that ever bother you, or does that ever frighten you? Does you think there might come a day where I lose the will to learn something new, or to move forward, or to even understand what's going on, or doesn't that thought ever cross your mind?
I think I'm not afraid of that point, because I have the clear opinion that if that day comes, in roles like mine, you simply would have the duty to resign, because that's how these roles are structured, and also frankly rewarded, that you don't cling to them if you come to the conclusion that you...
And you could do that?
Can't. Yeah, I think so, yeah. I would not be shy to do that.
Zeno Staub, thank you very much.
Thank you.